This is welcome to our June presentation, our June webinar on cybersecurity. I'm Jeremy Cherney, and today we're going to talk about a lot of things cybersecurity. There's going to be a lot of information coming your way, and we like to answer any questions along the way. There'll be time at the end. And some of you probably have been here before. Some of you know a lot about security. Some of you may be really focused on this webinar. Some of you may just be kind of having it off in the background while you do some other things. That's all okay, but just think about, even if you've heard it before, even if you think you've heard this stuff before, kind of hear it like it's like the first time, and look for yourself where there might be some issues or things that you might need to tackle or investigate. We're going to talk about some of those risks and some of the mitigations, and certainly, like I said, there'll be some Q&A along the way. So before we jump in, because people come from all different backgrounds and things around security, we like to start of what are we even talking about when we say security? And usually it's any breach of the CIA triad. That's the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of your systems. And people don't always think about availability of systems as a security event. But, you look around at the weather and storms and things and the power outages and the severe weather events causing outages and problems for people. Those are definitely security events if you can't access your systems. So we think about those things as well. But we'll talk about other stuff people talk about here, phishing and ransomware and other things along the way. But really, it's about blind spots. What are you not seeing in the side view mirror? Is it safe to make the change to go in the next lane? It could be okay, but there might be a truck there or something else, or a person on a bike, or who knows. So, that's what this thing with security is. You probably have some blind spots around security. And this is a great day to start to uncover those, because if you don't know it's there, you can't deal with it. Once it's there, at least you got a shot. So as we're going through this, again, keep thinking about it for yourself, for your business, for your life, anywhere, because this home security around this makes a difference too. Sometimes that's the vector of attack for some businesses, as they came through the business owner's personal accounts. It is in the news all over the place. These are just some headlines I grabbed. These are probably from a few months ago already, but I can grab some from any day and go find a number of ransomware events, cybersecurity events that are happening daily, with big companies, small companies, municipalities, hospitals, insurance. I mean, everyone is under attack, the government. So no one's immune from it. And they're just happening all the time. So it is still a continuing problem. If you're a 60 Minutes fan, they've done a number of reports recently about cybersecurity and how bad it is. And, it's another good place to get information on that. This is kind of where the state is. There used to be a thing back in the day, this concept of the castle moat theory of security, right? You got the castle, and everyone inside the castle is safe. And all we got to do is protect this one drawbridge to get in, and everyone else would have to come in over the water that, who knows what's in the water, teeming with alligators or who knows what they had back then. But if they did any of that in England and that kind of stuff. But, certainly it made it much more difficult. And for a long time, that really worked until it didn't anymore. And now you have to really worry about that it's not safe anymore. It's not safe inside your own network. It used to be, all we have to worry about is on the outside. No, you really have to worry about what's happening inside your network, because that is where things are happening. That's where the different things that I'm going to show you, a lot of them are happening inside your network. And if people aren't aware of it, if you're not taking steps to identify it, to mitigate it, then it's going to be a real challenge for you to really protect yourself. So it's just, you want to get away from this myth. We actually talked to a company a month or two ago, and they were still under this conception that they don't have to worry about anything on the inside. They were just worried about, if they had a firewall, all that problem was all outside of their business, outside of their network, outside of their systems. And it's just, we just had to really break the bad news to them, that it's really, you got to worry about what's happening inside. So in that regard, security is only as good as its weakest link. and there's a concept, the chain of trust with security, and you have to be right 100% of the time, and the hackers really just have to be right once. And you're getting hit all the time. All those spam messages, they're getting blocked by your, anti-spam software that have malicious attachments and all those are attacks. We're kind of, immune, we're kind of numb to them. They're more of an irritant at this point, but those are still attacks. If I look at your firewall and look at the report on all the blockage things that it's blocking, websites it's blocking, both internally and externally, those are attacks. Those are things that are happening all the time. And so if you're not up to speed on those, if you're not watching those, like I said, it's just how bad it's going to be. And for some companies, it gets really bad. Um, this is just one more incident, I kind of want to really drive home that idea of the castle and moat. This was an incident that happened, what's that, 7 years ago. These HP all-in-one printers that some of you probably still have or have something similar now. They had those inside the network. And the only thing that was really available outside the network was the fax piece, which, who it's supposed to receive faxes. You have to connect it to the phone system to receive faxes. So what's going on? Well, somebody figured out a way, because really it's a printer, we call it a printer and a fax machine, but it's really a computer that can print and a computer that can fax. So, with these computers, they're easy, they got taken over by a malicious fax. The fax came in, the computer processed it like it normally does, and there was something about the way it processed it and the way the fax came through that allowed them to take over the fax machine, which then allowed them to take over some other things and get a foothold inside the network and then start moving through. So that's why you just can't be safe inside your own office. Sorry about that. So a lot of this, it's about a process, not a product. There are certainly products you buy, firewalls and antivirus software and endpoint detection response software and all of that. But if you don't have good processes around that, that stuff's not going to make a difference that you think it's going to make. It's not magic technology. It's technology that has to be set up and configured properly. And you still want to be following best practices because it's not perfect technology. It's not 100% going to block everything all the time. So by following a lot of best practices, you can try and get ahead of some of that. One of the best practices we are encouraging every business owner to do, and this is, you really want to listen up on this. If you're responsible for the business, you want your ears really pricked up here. You want to be thinking about your business continuity plan. It's becoming pretty reliable that systems are down now for days or weeks at a time. Cloud systems, different systems you use all over the place. There was last summer, there was a program called Dealer Management System Software Systems, which is what all the car dealerships and truck dealerships, a lot of them used. A lot of them were down for 2 or 3 weeks, figuring out how to sell trucks and parts and service their customers. So, what are we talking about in a business continuity plan? We're going to dive a little deeper into it, but you want to be thinking, what is your plan? Because your systems will be down at some point. It's not like I'm trying to be doomsday or scaring you. It's just the odds are not in your favor. Now, the question is, like I said, how long and how bad? So do you need a business continuity plan? And I would say if some of your cloud systems you use beyond, Google, Microsoft, they have their outages, but usually those are in terms of hours or so, maybe the day. But some of you are using other third-party cloud systems, and we don't know what their plans are and their security posture and all of that. So you want to have a plan. Maybe you've been going to your favorite diner and, for years, and they always had that guest checkbook. And then one day they were using iPads and started taking your order. And then one day the internet's down and they're like, I knew those iPads were a dumb idea. And they just went in their drawer and they pulled out their old guest checkbook so they could take your order and bring it to the cook. So you want to have a plan for your business, whether it's some spreadsheets you need to create now, whether it's some reports you're going to print off regularly so that you've got them available when those systems aren't. And then while that's happening, what is your plan to recover? Because what the first is how to keep your business running. The second is how to get your systems back operational. That's the disaster recovery plan. So we're going to do a little deeper dive on that, but this is why we're talking about this. This is why it's worth your time to be here today, because you're going to have a need for this and you want to be prepared. The extent to which you're prepared is going to be, uh, to the extent of how much uh, joy and happiness you have through your cyber incident. Um, this principle of least privilege is something we want people to start thinking about. We're doing a security assessment for a school right now, and that school has a lot of different systems out there. And they're just now getting into following some of the principles of least privilege on some of their systems. And what that means is they used to have, their business management system, the thing that ran the school, and a lot of people were administrators on that system. And a lot of people had access to data that they shouldn't have access to. And that happens over time. Systems, again, that idea of, well, we don't have to worry about our internal people. We only need to worry about the external people. Well, you need to worry about the internal people because some of them are malicious, unfortunately. They're all human, which is a truth, and that, humans make mistakes, even if they're trying to do good. And like I said, when you're going to see some of the odds they're facing about some of the challenges out there, if they're the ones that get hit by principle of least privilege, it will limit the spread of the damage. So if your salesperson is the one hit and they don't have access to the payroll data because you set up least privilege, then when the salesperson is attacked, it'll only damage the sales data and not the payroll data. So this is something you want to be thinking about as we're going through this, of who has access to what inside your business. And you want to start setting up guardrails. Ransomware is what people are still worried about here. Before we do that, I think I'm going to jump into a poll. Before I start telling you about ransomware, which most of you are all worried about, what else are you worried about? Just about everything is getting some level of activity here, which will be expected. All right, I think we're gonna close this out here. Last few seconds here to have your voice heard. All right. So here's the results. And a lot of people still worried about malware, of course, ransomware, business email compromise for sure, and social engineering. Yeah, and everything's here, right? And these are all, the thing you want to get is these are all separate and distinct types of threats that all have distinct and different types of process and technology and policy and education you need. So um, it's good you're thinking about all these things, and we'll talk about most of these as we go through here. Thank you. So the first one we're going to talk about is ransomware. This is the one that people most often are worried about, and well, they should, because this is the thing that seems to be taking businesses down for multiple days at a time, multiple weeks at a time, and really jacking up the cost of doing business for everybody in the world of cybersecurity and things like that. So ransomware, what does that mean? We're all familiar with ransom, right? Someone takes something we care about, something we love, takes it from us, assuming we want it back, and then they want to charge us for it, right? We stole the family diamond, we stole the baby, we stole the whatever. In this case, it's stealing the data. Stealing your data. And what do they do? How do they steal it? They do it in two ways. One is they first encrypt it, which means they lock it up. They put passwords around it so you can't get at your own data. You try and look at it, it looks like gibberish because you don't have the special key that they put around everything. So then they want to charge you for that special key. And this screen I love because I keep it because it's kind of an OG kind of a ransomware thing. If you look, $300 of Bitcoin. That was before most people even knew what Bitcoin was. And $300 was, people were indignant back then. Now people would kill to have it only be $300. Now it's $300,000, $30,000, $3 million. I mean, it's all over the place. Um, so ransomware is still something that's the problem. If you're not prepared for ransomware, your systems will get locked up and you won't have access to your data and you'll have to pay or recreate the data. And businesses do different things. Some people are paying and dealing with that. And there's obviously, moral things around that, but it's your business. You kind of understand it, right? Do I want to, you know, take the moral high ground or do I want my business to be operational again? Now, we're going to talk about insurance in a bit, but even with insurance, which is great, a lot of times you can't get at your systems for a bit because they got to do their due diligence on going on, looking at what's going on. So even with good insurance and all of that, they still may, and you get hit, you still may not be able to access your systems. So this is one you want to watch out for. And I think on 60 Minutes, they were talking about this before. I think I saw this in the last few months. They were talking about the data exfiltration and ransomware business and who's doing it, the threat actors out there. But this is the part that we're really talking about was this ransomware as a service. This is the part that really stuck with me, right? Because there's, you can think about there's the malicious people out there and there's the people with a grudge and, some of those things are kind of obvious, right? People with a grudge against your business or grudge against the world, or, if it's some kind of social or nation state, with wars going on and things like that, you can imagine that happening between nation states. But really, what's happening, where these money is being made, this is where the ransomware gangs are getting together and just living the high life with these ransomware as a service business. So you don't even have to be a ransomware expert. You don't have to be a security expert. You can literally give them a credit card and a target and they'll go after it. And they've got a network, a referral network, they got their kind of multi-level marketing kind of business that they do. They'll do referrals, rewards, if you can get someone to ransom, they'll take a cut of it and all that. I mean, it's a very good business. It's a terrible, use of a good model, but it is a good model. They're doing really well with it, and it's scary. And one shuts down, another one springs up. It's almost trivial to do these things when people aren't protected. So the first thing you want to do is you want to get a security assessment. You got to know where you stand, right? If we're talking about blind spots in the mirror, you got to turn your head and take a look and really see what's there, even if you don't like it, even if you're a little scared of what's there. You still want to know where you stand. And that's, it's can be a little confronting at times, but it's also kind of good. Then Now you don't have to worry about what you don't know. And now you may be concerned about when you're going to do it, how you're going to do it, how you're going to pay for it, but at least it won't be a blind spot. And maybe you've got some worries about some things that you don't need to be worrying about. So wouldn't that be nice to know that you might be in a better shape than you are? But the only way to really know that is by going through a security assessment. And we recommend doing that so you know where you stand. If you don't, without that, you're just kind of, you can do best practices, but you don't know if you're really going to cover everything. Once you've done your assessment and you know kind of the scope of and you want to talk to your business advisor, we're not business advisors in this regard, but we recommend getting cyber liability insurance. We picked up a client, I think it was last year, end of last year, that got hit. They were a new client to us. They brought us in to help them recover because they got hit with ransomware. They had good cyber liability insurance because the recovery is over 6 figures. to recover their systems. So you want to get good cyber liability insurance. You want to make sure that it is covering what, you need for your business. People ask me, how much should we get? I don't know how much you should get because it kind of depends on your business and what's your cost of downtime and things like that. How much do you need to protect for? But if you've got something that, it's only a few $1,000s, a $5,000 policy or something like that, it's probably insufficient. You probably want something that's 100,000 plus, maybe million, or more, because you just don't really know where things are going. And some of this stuff may not even be in your control. So you want to make sure you've got contingent business insurance for liability insurance for the cloud services you use, because they could be down for 2 or 3 weeks or for good. There was one, what was the one in England or in India, I think, was just down. I think they might have just gotten back up, but they were completely like everything was down for a month, 2 months, something like that. So um, you want to make sure you got sufficient insurance for those kinds of things. We can talk to you a bit about it, look at the policy, and then you want to look and see if there's any uh, parts of the policy that are things that affect your payouts, your coverage. Sometimes they have, one of our clients had us look at their policy, and there was a clause in there that, we're going to talk about software patching in a little bit, but, software patches come out and they expect you to put them on. And if you don't put them on within a certain amount of time, the insurance company was reducing the payout. And in some cases, if you got hit by a patch, I think it was if it was over 6 months and you hadn't patched your systems, but the security patch was available for 6 months, meaning there was a known security vulnerability that you didn't tend to, the coverage went from like 2 million to $100,000. So you want to make sure you're following the provisions of what's there. We talk about storms and things like this, and this is just such a dramatic photo. There's always a tragedy behind this, and that's not the part we're talking about here, but we're talking about just the physical destruction. Any computers that were, in this area were probably not in very good usable shape within a matter of seconds. In Joplin, Missouri, that tornado went through, and, the news is filled with storms and things every night, whether it's any time of the season, whether it's the fires, the floods, the tornadoes, the hurricanes, the droughts that are causing the heat that causes power outages and fires. I mean, there's just so many things that Mother Nature is kind of conspiring against us here with our technology. So, you got to be able to protect it in a way, because eventually Mother Nature is going to win on this stuff, and you want to make sure it's protected. So you might say, okay, great, I'm going to send all my stuff to the cloud because they don't have to worry about those. And the clouds, they've got better protections and they're protected from tornadoes and all that stuff. And there it is true, they have better protections, but you are still responsible for your data that is in any of the clouds. And you want to look at, whether you're using Microsoft or Google Workspace, almost every cloud service you use, if you read your terms and conditions, they're going to say they're going to have exclusions about what they are and are not responsible for. And a lot of times they're just not really responsible for your data, which is kind of a weird thing to think about because that's where all your data is. But you're still responsible for it, backing it up, managing it, and all of that. This is Microsoft's model, but a lot of them have a very similar thing. So you're going to the cloud and you're thinking everything's protected. That's fine. I just got to worry about that. But if you're not backing it up, there are problems in the cloud. The OVH data center fire took out a lot of systems, and it took out a lot of small business systems because, again, you look some of the big systems you might use, Microsoft or Google, Salesforce, things like that. They usually have those pretty well designed that to survive data center outages. Because if you have everything all in one data center, that's your castle. Everything that's going to go inside there is going to be a problem. So you want to have things spread out, but not everybody has the wherewithal or money to spread their stuff out over multiple data centers. So one data center going out could take out the whole system. So if you don't have your own backups of your data, um, or if you got some other protections or a business continuity plan for when this inevitably happens again, you might be out of luck. So you want to be setting your expectations around these disasters. This might be a deeper conversation to have, to sit down with you and kind of go through some of these things, or go through your IT provider with this, but you want to set your expectations now and really get clear about what those things are. Because if you're not setting them now, you're unlikely to be happy with the outcomes when they actually uh, when you're actually in the thick of it. And people promise a lot without testing or validating or even really talking to you about your business needs. So you want to get clear for yourself and maybe have a conversation about this. This gets into the disaster recovery piece. Remember, we talked about business continuity is how you're going to run your business while the systems are down. This is like, okay, how long are the systems going to be down? How long do I have to get it back up and running? That's this piece. It's this disaster recovery process. You've got to get clear on your expectations with that. So you don't have a conversation. People always say, it can't go down for more than a few minutes or a few hours. Well, there's a big difference between a few hours and a week or two. And like I said, in some cases, you might be ready to bring your systems back up and running, but the insurance company won't let you because they still have to do their investigation. We've seen that happen multiple times where somebody actually had good backups in a disaster recovery plan, but they couldn't start it yet until the insurance company had done their own security investigations. They understood what the scope of things was going to be and the payouts and all that kind of stuff. But if you don't test your disaster recovery plan, then it's just going to be, you're going to get what you're going to get when it comes time for a disaster. And those reports you get that show, green check mark that your backup was successful is not a substitute for a disaster recovery test. It's not the same thing. And we've seen it over and over and over again where people got the green check mark that everything's backed up, and then you start to recover and some stuff's just not working right. There's things that have to be done, vendors that have to be called, license keys that need to be procured, and things like that. And all of a sudden, what you thought was going to take a couple hours to get back up and running is, you're kind of up and running after a few days and limping along on different things while you're trying to get back up. So you want to get a good process together. You want to have a playbook, and you want to test it regularly, especially when things change. This might be a little daunting for some of you. You're going to have a conversation about just this slide and have a whole good meeting over lunch about how you want to see your business continuity happening. But again, you want to have a plan now because you just may not have the things available for you to do what you need to do when you actually need to be operating your business on paper or on Excel spreadsheets off your desktop because of a disaster you got. So you want to plan for this ahead of time. And this takes some time. This is not meant to be a whole webinar on business continuity planning. That, like I said, this is a whole other thing. But if you don't have one, if you're like, hey, if you can't answer the question, if my systems are down for a longer time than I want, how am I going to run my business? What tools, paper, reports, spreadsheets, phone numbers, email addresses, whatever you need to run your business. Software patching is really important. 70% of organizations that suffered a security breach cite it was a known vulnerability that went unpatched. Isn't that crazy? Some people are running systems that can be patched. Those are those security patches. You see them, on your computer, Windows updates. That's what I'm talking about, Windows updates, or, you get the message, it's this program, there's a new update available. Do you want to install it? Get them on your phone all the time. That's what we're talking about. And then those patches are sometimes, with new features and things like that. And those are sometimes helpful, sometimes annoying, but more likely they also have security patches with them too. There's known security holes that are being fixed. Every Tuesday, they call it Patch Tuesday, after the second Tuesday of the month. Um, it's the second or first. Anyway, Microsoft releases the patches. And that's when everyone knows. And all those patches are not always just new features. Those are, 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 different patches that are different security holes throughout Windows that are being patched. And that's just Windows. You're also using Microsoft Office, you're using Adobe products, you're using all kinds of third-party applications and different web browsers and all that. So patching is a must, and stuff's coming out all the time. And if you haven't got a good system to do it, you're going to be missing the boat. This is an easy way to be proactive, right? Someone could actually click on the wrong link and you're not going to be impacted because you patched. Something got in the castle, something got inside the house, and you were okay because things were properly patched. It makes a big difference. And when you don't do it, it can be massively inconvenient and very expensive for everybody. Equifax had a huge data breach, right? The credit reporting agency, because they didn't patch something. They had one portal, a web portal that was like a customer service portal or something that they were running that had some software behind it that didn't get patched, which was an easy patch. It was a known patch. I don't know why they didn't patch it, but they didn't. And then they used that to get a foothold inside the network and then moved and did all kinds of stuff. And then they also had a string of mistakes for how they responded to it and all of that. But it's a real thing. So you want to make sure you're patching stuff and you want to be using software that can be patched. Some of you are still having Windows 7 computers out there that no longer have automatic patching from Microsoft and no longer have uh, uh, paid patching from Microsoft. There are some third-party solutions out there, but you're not running those most likely. And Windows 10 is happening this October. Microsoft is no longer going to have public patches available for Windows 10 anymore. And if you want to keep running it, you need to start paying $61 a year. And then that doubles every year for the next 2 years up until they stop doing those patches. So you got to make sure you're doing patches on everything you're doing. But yeah, not just Windows, not just Office. If you're using those zip programs, WinRAR and WinZip and 7-Zip, those kinds of things get patched all the time. And those are sometimes the attack vector. A malicious zip file or a malicious RAR file comes through in the email, and you guys are getting attacked that way. So patch, patch, patch. Two-factor authentication. This used to be kind of a mystery for people. Now it's pretty common. Most people are very familiar with this, annoyance, which it certainly is, having to do this extra thing, but it is definitely more secure than just having a password. Passwords are regularly breached and reused and stuffed and all these different things that people do with passwords. So you need these extra factors, and some of you are still not using them. At school, I mentioned, one of the things they're not doing everywhere is using multi-factor authentication. That's a problem, right? So they need to do that. They need to put these things in place because without it, they're just a password breach away from a major security incident. But passwords are even starting to go away. Which I'll talk about that in a second, but you really want to enable these. And I say everywhere, I mean everywhere. Who's your phone provider? Who's your internet service provider? Who is your web provider? Where is your domain registered? Your domain registrar? All of those things are areas where if you don't have multi-factor, those are areas where compromises can happen that can lead to account takeovers. So you want to be doing that. And the other thing you might be hearing about is something called passkeys. This is something that is not so new, but definitely being enforced more. They've made it a little easier for people to use passkeys now. A pass key is just like a regular key. Like think of it like a physical key to your house, right? You've got this key, and that is the only kind of key with that specific pattern of ridges on the key that can open that door. And anyone with a key or a copy of that key can get into your door, right? So you learn to treat your keys carefully, right? You learn to keep them on your person. You learn to sort of fret when you can't find your keys. You learn to change your locks when you lose your keys, things like that. Well, pass keys are kind of like that. So there's now instead of passwords, companies are issuing keys, or rather, you're requesting a key through them, and they issue what's called a private key that only you know, but you're responsible for keeping that key secure. So there's different ways you can do that through Windows and Bitwarden, Password Manager, and some of those things. But bottom line is passwords are starting to go away. Pass keys are way more secure because without a pass key, there's no more passwords to worry about. There is no password to get in. In some cases, people are getting rid of passwords completely and only using a pass key, which means there's no reuse, and if no one else has your pass key or can guess your pass key. So it's something to be on your radar. It's something you're going to start seeing more of. It's something you're going to start seeing enforced more, and it's actually a good thing to do. Because Colonial Pipeline, you guys remember that 4 years ago on the news, oil pipeline shut down, gas pipeline shut down, and because of a ransom or a ransomware attack because of a compromised password. So the pipeline was down for 7 days. Of course, gas lines makes the news. Politicians get involved because no one likes to see gas lines on their watch. So they kind of dealt with it pretty quickly. I think Russia might have gotten involved in somehow shutting these guys down and stuff. But they were looking for $4.4 million and the pipeline was down. So tend to your passwords, get a good password manager. But more importantly, and why you're here today and what you want for other people, don't be the only one in your organization that's interested in security. I mean, you can, but it's really going to limit your eye on things. People should watch this video. People should come to this presentation. If you want us to come and do this inside your organization, we're happy to do that and answer questions, directly from some of the stakeholders. But you want to start getting people involved in being aware of security, thinking about security, see something, say something. You want to have that neighborhood watch going on at your business. You want to including security awareness training as part of what you do, right? Maybe you train people on how to uh, make coffee, right? There might be a procedure on how to make and clean the coffee maker, and you've got training on that, right? Do you have training for your team on what to do when there's a cybersecurity incident? Do the people who handle money know what to do? Are they getting special training because of their role? Don't just assume, you did some training 3 years ago and it's okay. Don't just assume people are, know this stuff. Don't assume, you do you, I'll do me kind of a thing. This is something you really want to make sure your team knows what the threats are so they can be part of this. Because the social engineering is getting crazy, crazy, crazy. They are getting so many different ways of pretending, threats, urgencies. It's a massive con game, right? They're trying to pretend to be someone you trust, something you care about, something to get you hot about without thinking. Leap before you, think kind of a thing. And it's just getting crazy with AI. It's even getting worse. It used to be pretty obvious. You would get literally, there would be emails coming from someone saying they're a Nigerian prince and that they've got this money for you. If you can just help them, move this money to the United States, you'll get a cut of it. And people were doing that, even though it was a well-known scam, even though they often have bad grammar, poor grammar, and misspellings and things that just look like you can tell it's not from the person. That is just almost a thing of the past now. With AI, we used to give out a sheet like this and tell people, look at who it's from, which you definitely want to still look at who it's from. You want to look at who it's to because bad emails still get through, even with all the best anti-spam systems. Some still gets through, so people still need to know. But this content part down here, it's, you know, you got to still read it, but it used to look at, like I said, it doesn't look as obvious now. It looks legit. And if you're seeing some of the videos out there around AI, it's really hard for experts to even guess because it's almost coming down to guessing now. So the threat is real with the artificial intelligence out there. The attack sophistication is going up. The deep fakes, the pretending to be grandma, or not pretending to be grandma, someone pretending to be a grandkid calling grandma is a real thing. Hey, grandma, I don't want mom and dad to get upset, but I got in trouble on spring break and I'm in jail and I need you to wire me $10,000 or $2,000 or whatever. And people are doing it because it sounds like them because grandma, posted a picture online and everyone knows what grandma sounds like and posting proud pictures of her grandkids, doing their trip abroad to Mexico. And this, so AI, it's not even like it's trivial for it to just look at that, create a script, create a fake voice, go to the kids' Insta page, grab their videos, grab their pictures, grab their words, and generate a fake grandchild on the fly to call grandma. That is legit going on. So you just have to be worried about that. And that's happening in the business too. It's just getting worse and worse. So, and it's just happening so fast. Now that's, what is AI great for? Automation. AI is great for doing things better than people can. Well, right before this, it was people doing this by hand, creating this. Now they're in, like I said, those businesses I was telling you before that are in business to make money off of cyber crimes are, they want to be efficient and effective and, they want to cut their staff by replacing them with AI bots that can do all this. Of course, they're going to do it. So it's getting worse, not better. And it's really getting used to, it's getting so hard now. If you look at some of the things, if you see some of the more recent videos that are out, where it looks like somebody's saying, "Hey, this is me," and it looks like a public service announcement, and it's tough. It's tough to tell. So you just got to really watch out for it. Um, but what's happening in your workplace with it, right? Because we want to use AI because look, it's making our jobs so easy. I didn't have to write that long, complicated memo to my customer. I just had to go into ChatGPT and say, "Hey, I got a customer and they got this issue and I don't know how to explain it to them. Give me some help." And then it spits out a message for you to cut and paste into Outlook that you can send. But do you have a policy in your workplace on how AI can be used? People are pasting in personally identifiable information into these cloud systems. They're pasting client code information. They're pasting business information into these things and using it as a source material. If you haven't played with these, you may not know what I'm talking about, but you know exactly what I'm talking about. Oh, I have a question about this contract that's 47 pages. I don't want to read that. Let me just upload that into ChatGPT and ask it what it thinks about the contract. So data leakage is real. Now, these systems do have, incognito modes. They do have, those different safeguards they're trying to put up. But those are not always effective. They're only effective until they're breached. So that's happening with what are called prompt injection and jailbreak attacks, where people are um, corrupting the systems, crafting things differently so that what you're putting into the system is and what you're getting out may be tainted. If you're using it to write code, this is one other great thing. Hey, you got to write some computer code, a macro, some API, something. It can do it. And it does a pretty good job of it with just a little bit of coaxing. But it's writing code. It does not, you can say, get this job done. It doesn't know, write this code and make it totally secure. I was talking to a colleague who's got someone in their organization that's doing some coding from their website to grab information off their website and put it into their customer management system and some things like that. And like it's good, helpful stuff, but it's not something they really know about. So while it may functionally work, we don't know if it's going to be done securely. So you got to watch out for that. And then there's a shadow IT, third-party supply chain risks. People are corrupting the models, by having it get trained on bad data, injecting data. So, and we're just learning about this now. And then there's a thing, OpenAI, who makes ChatGPT. They're getting sued by the likes of like New York Times and Getty Museum and things like that over copyright violation. They're like, hey, you're scraping the New York Times and using that data to train your models. We didn't give you permission to do that. So they're suing them, which is a legit lawsuit, and that's fine. That makes sense. Let it go through the thing. But what they told them to do in the meantime is they have to save all the evidence. So the current court order is ChatGPT has to save every uh, question and every response, every prompt and every response that you're putting into it, even if you're doing it in their incognito mode, even if you told it to delete it. Now they're fighting that. That came up last week. I don't know the current state of it, but that's an example of even if you put this stuff up here, you may you may have your data breached because of a court order. A lot of people weren't happy with what happened with some of the Doge things and people walking in with flash drives and grabbing data. You just don't know about some of these things. So we're actually um, developing a product at Tobin that's a private AI server that is all the data is internal to you and doesn't go out so that you can do some things and not worry as much about some of these things happening. But it's a wild west with some of this stuff and people are rushing in to use it and you're going to start seeing a lot more of all these breaches I'm talking about happening on that side. So one of the things to really worry about is the deep fake stuff. And I would invite you to come up with a code word that you don't write down, that you don't share via email or any of that kind of stuff for your friends and family and for people at work. Some code word that you literally will use because you are going to get a call. You are going to get an email requesting money. You are going to get a call or email saying, hey, I need you to change the address of where my paycheck is going, or those kinds of things. Or, hey, I'm looking at, I need you to wire $10,000 to this consultant because I'm thinking of buying a business. You're going to get these things. You're going to get the request for the, I need you to do gift cards, the gift card scam. And if you're doing it all via email or even via phone call or texting, it could all be fake. So you need to have a code word or some other verification system that you can rely on that can't be spoofed by anybody else or can't be intercepted by anybody else. So when your family's all together over 4th of July, figure out your family code word. Next time you got your leadership team together, come up with your code word and put it somewhere safe. Um, the credit reporting with ID theft, that's another aspect of this. The Between the deep fakes that are out there and people being able to easily impersonate someone you love or trust, or who you hopefully love and trust as well, combined with the breaches that are happening all the time. There was this National Public Data breach. National Public Data is a company that aggregates information. They're a data broker for reselling to people that want mass amounts of data on people for mailings and politics and whatever else they're using these databases for. And that got breached. Social security numbers, passwords. So all that stuff that used to be the secret thing that only you knew when establishing credit, like the last four digits of your social security number and stuff, could very well be breached and out there and available. And it's just happening just all the time. And one of the first things I do in the morning is I listen to uh, a security podcast that talks about the threats from overnight and what's being attacked and what the breaches were and things like that. And it's happening daily. It's happening weekly. So go freeze your credit, do fraud alerts, or even do credit freezes, hit all of them, including that last one in Novus. And it's a pain in the butt, by the way, if you haven't done that. But when you go create the accounts, guess what they do? They're like, oh, what's your social security number? Stuff like that is the verification. They might have some other stuff in there, but again, it's getting trivial to bypass that stuff. So be the first to get your account set up and set up the credit freeze and that on there. Save yourself some heartache. Share this information with the people in your life, your family, your community. If you're on the board of directors of a nonprofit, they need to hear this stuff. Anyone that handles money, they definitely got to hear this stuff. Anybody that is going to be the one that can send the credit card number, transfer, ACH, collects the money, changes where money is sent, all of those kinds of things, those should all be verbal requests for wire transfers with your secret code. And I mean verbal, like even if you're going to do it via phone, you just got to be really sure you're talking to who you think you're talking to. But those are the ones that really need the training. I mentioned passwords going away before but there's still some passwords out there, going to be out there for a long time before some of those go away. These password managers can also store those pass keys. So we use Bitwarden, which is a good one that we like for a variety of reasons, but mainly it'll help you store your passwords. It can also store your secret, those 6-digit codes that rotate, and you can also store your pass keys in Bitwarden so that they're always available with you wherever you're, coming from your phone or tablet or from another computer. But you want to be using these password managers. And if you're using a passbook, you're writing things down, that's okay. It's not bad, because, in terms of the castle, someone would physically need to be inside your castle, which that can happen where people can break in or cleaning people or whatever. But some of you are then taking that passbook and then putting it in your briefcase and taking it in your car, taking it home with you on nights and weekends, maybe stopping off for, you know, burger and fries on the way home and hitting the restaurant or something and leaving your car unattended. So don't do that. Don't do that stuff. Have a good password manager and use the emergency mode in the password manager, especially if you've got kids or you're the person that helps your uh, parents. Have that emergency mode set up in there where if you need access to their passwords, you can request it and they will then have some period of time to deny you access. And if they don't deny you because they're dead or incapacitated, then you'll get access to their passwords. And believe that's also a real gift for parents you can do for your kids, as part of your getting your affairs in order and things like that, your will and stuff, having these emergency accounts set up. Or if your kids are going to college, off to school or, off to serve wherever they're going, um, it's not a bad thing to be able to get at the passwords when they allow you to. Encryption is still important. Um, One of the things that happens with the ransomware is they don't just lock up your systems, they'll take copies of the data. Because some of you have learned, and some of you are listening to your IT people, and you're getting good backups that you can recover from. But what's happening is the data is being exfiltrated, meaning it's being taken off your network and stored somewhere on another system that you don't have access to. So even if you don't pay the ransom for the data recovery, you might have to pay the ransom for the data exposure. If you've got important contracts or things like that, you may not want that information out there. And a lot of times this is their proof of life kind of a thing. In the movies, what happens when the person is kidnapped and held for ransom, they'll send a finger, something nasty, or an ear. They'll send a copy of a contract and say, "Yep, here's your data." So you want to make sure you're doing your best. This is not always easy, by the way. A lot of systems don't lend themselves well to data at rest encryption and things like that. But certainly, if you've got devices that you're keeping, like laptops, tablets, things like that get lost or stolen, you want to make sure those hard drives are encrypted. And then you want to make sure you can get at the data for yourself if something happens, you get locked out or whatever. So there's things you need to be able to do around this. And again, this is another thing that sometimes shows up in the cyber liability policies. Compliance needs, be compliant with your cyber policy, be compliant with your business contracts, be compliant if you take credit cards or store health information or have any of these other compliance needs. If you're not sure, find out, but you want to be in compliance. You want to do managed security services, either managing it yourself and doing all of these things, or working with a company like us or somebody else to make sure that someone's doing these things for you. Right? These are not like set it and forget it. Oh, I put my firewall in, now I never have to look at it again. Someone needs to be monitoring it because remember what I said at the beginning, you're being attacked all the time. So while security is a process, not a product, there are products that are just kind of table stake stuff that you need. Good firewall, good EDR, um, good technology all around. So you want to make sure you've got, assess where you're at with those and that you're up to speed on using the latest of those that you need, a modern security stack, as well as what you might need for compliance. There's other blind spots. So this is why you want to do a security assessment. And we're just running low on time here. And some of you are probably going at the fire hose here. And I didn't even do my other survey here that I was supposed to send out. So but there are other things. I am sure if I dropped a flash drive like this and you're with David and Zoe's precious memories on it, someone's going to plug it in your office because they want to be a helper. So there are blind spots around this thing. People have TVs hanging on their wall connected to their networks where the software has been updated in 3 years. So there are best practices. But this last one, grab a calendar, put some time on your calendar now to go through this presentation. You're going to get a copy of a survey. We'd love you to let us know how we did, how we're doing on these things. This will be the last one for a few days, for a few months. We'll pick these back up again in September. So hope you have a good, safe summer. But spend a little time working on some of this stuff. Sometimes for some of you, business is a little slower in the summer. Maybe now is a good time to look at this, determine what you need, and implement some of these things. But nothing's going to happen if you keep your head in the sand. Nothing's going to happen if you just go on your day after this and don't do anything from what you've learned today. I am certain that if you look, you have a gap in where you are and where you want to be or where most experts think you should be. So you want to know what that gap is and to put a plan together to fulfill it. It's a journey, not a destination. We're happy to be with you along that journey. Let us know how we can help. Thank you for being here. Have a great day. Enjoy your summer. Happy 4th if you celebrate the 4th of July. And that's it. I'll be around for a few questions. Otherwise, thanks so much. Take care.